Here we are.
Here we are.
Imaging USA.
It's really nice to see you in 3D.
It's nice to see you as well.
Yeah, in 3D, I watch you all the time. I text with you all the time, but like seeing you in 3D, it's a little weird.
Conferences only.
We live in a two-dimensional world now. That's how we communicate with people. And so it's a little unnerving to see your head as round as it is.
There's a backside to it.
It's shockingly round.
Yeah. We're here with Gary Hughes. And we're going to be talking a little bit about kind of three topics, I think.
Okay.
Number one is wedding photography.
Cool.
Because word on the street is you photographed one or two weddings in your career?
Yeah. I can give you a little backstory on that, but we got to say the other two things first.
Second thing, Imaging USA, conventions, conferences,
Been to a few.
why they're important, how they've changed your life.
Mm-hmm.
And then third, your switch to more of a headshot-based business.
Oh, yeah.
And
We call it a
came about.
commercial portrait studio.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'm a wedding photographer. I'm learning too.
Okay.
So yeah.
You want to talk about the wedding stuff?
Yeah, let's go wedding first.
Do you feel like that weddings are often the genre that new photographers get into? Like, because it's just sort of there. It's when people think professional photographer, they think weddings, I feel like.
I think so.
Yeah.
To some degree,
A muggle. We call them muggles, those who are not photographers. So when muggles think about photographers, when you say you're a photographer, the next question is always, oh, do you shoot weddings? Right?
Yeah.
That's my experience,
true.
right?
Yeah.
So my parents had a wedding and portrait studio my entire life. For 35 years, they're retired now. And I have 3 siblings, and we all had to work in the family business. It was not an option. I was putting together proof books for weddings as a kid. I still can feel the soreness in the tips of my fingers from having to put together proof books when I was like 9. So that was the job. And when I got into photography, I didn't intend to do weddings, but it sort of went into that when I started my own business with my partner, Julie, also my wife. You say partner in Canada, right?
Yeah.
But she's my business partner and my life partner.
It's partner squared.
No, yes. So we did a lot of weddings, but my first wedding, I was 10 or 11 when I assisted my dad on a wedding. That was part of being in the family business. And so I would say that including the working for my parents' business and my own studio, I have probably worked at or shot close to 1,000 weddings.
Okay.
Every weekend from the time I was 10 to the time I ran screaming to college away from wedding photography.
So you have a perspective that I feel like maybe no one else has.
Well, there are other kind of people who grew up in the industry. And I've found a few here over the years at Imaging USA where if you're a photographer's kid, I feel like if your parents have a job, like a notable profession, you're either going to do that or you're going to run screaming in the opposite direction. And so those other kids, photographers' kids who are now adult photographers at these things, we all know each other. We have a handshake. But there's a certain understanding. It's like, yeah, I didn't get out either. You know, like I'm still in it. Yeah. So, but it's cool. I learned a lot. And that's how I really got plugged into PPA and Imaging USA because my parents were members here. They attended this conference and stuff like that, even spoke at this conference. And it was sort of, and I was telling somebody this story the other day, it was when I picked up photography on my own, when I had gone and done a bunch of other things, I started shooting for fun, for pleasure. And my first camera, I got on a Black Friday sale. It was a Canon Digital Rebel, like with a screen, it was like this big. So I've shot film. I've worked in a film studio, but professionally, I've never shot film. And so that was my first foray into it. And as soon as my mom found out that I was taking pictures, she immediately went on the PPA site. Actually, they may have not even been able to do this to the website at that time. She immediately called up PPA and paid for the first year of my PPA membership. And she called me and she's like, you're a PPA member now. And that was the beginning. That was how it started.
That's amazing.
But I loved weddings. Do you love shooting weddings?
Yeah, I genuinely do.
What do you love about shooting weddings? Because I'm interested in that.
You're taking pictures of people's parties. Like, I'm going to say I love 90% of weddings. So when you're working with your ideal couples, it's amazing. There's nothing better.
That's a really good point.
But then especially the early stages of your business, when you're working for just kind of like anyone that you can
because you have to make money and you have to
it's hard. It sucks. Like
when your business gets critical mass and you have a strong brand and you're attracting like folks to you, like your people, when you're singing the song of your people and they start coming to you, like they get it. Because weddings can be a factory. So if I was to set up in my area and I were to just be let's say a $1,900 US dollar, so that's like 4,000 Canadian. So like a $1,900 wedding photographer, that's like 5 hours, and we used to say 5 in a disc, but it's 5 hours and all the files. A shoot and burn, as people would call it. and I had good SEO, good marketing, could put up a decent, functional, high-converting website, I could find 5 wedding photographers to work for me, and I could just turn that into a factory. But sometimes that's how weddings can be sometimes. Some people just want pictures. But the people who hire you want Taylor, your kind of unique vision and voice. And that doesn't really happen until you develop a style, right? Yeah. And so I feel like you said in the beginning, I think I shot my first wedding with my own company. I think I shot a wedding, and it was like a 12-hour wedding day, and I think I did it for $900. Or yesterday I was actually looking for pictures from that wedding. And I can't, they're on an old USB 1 external storage drive. They're not in my cloud storage that I've been using since like 2014. It's like pre that. And so I wasn't able to get my hands on them, but I really just wanted to see how bad I was. And I wanted to also, I'm trying to make a point about my style and when that developed and how that developed. And I think that, especially now with AI editing, with so many people teaching and selling their presets and selling stuff, no offense.
My presets.
Is that I spent a lot of my career trying to make my work look like someone else's. And it was when I sort of like stopped doing that. And I took a little piece from a lot of people. And there are a lot of people that do that for you. Maybe even somebody that took some of what I was doing at the time. But I took a little bit, a dash of Susan Stripling here, a little pull of Jerry Jonas here. I was like little elements. But instead of, literally, I would go to a conference like this. I would see an amazing wedding speaker. And then I would completely copy theirs. I'd be like, I'm doing that forever. I'm buying that light modifier and that lens, and I'm going to shoot like them forever. And when I stopped doing that is when I started to develop a sense of style. And I stopped and I asked myself, what do I like? What do I want my images to feel like? What do I want people to feel when they look at my images? And when I stopped worrying about being as good as anyone else and just work in my program, which took probably 5 or 6 years into professional photography. Not that I ever gave anybody anything bad or substandard, but it wasn't mine for several years. And that's just time. I don't think you can just turn that switch and do it. And that was a really cool moment. And I started to realize that instead of getting the we need to hire a photographer, we started getting people that were like, we love your work and we want to hire you. And not only did that change the business for me, I started to enjoy it more, but the business became something more enjoyable to be in and be around. It's something that I liked and I was proud of. When you get past the point of I'm trying to pay my bills, which is a noble pursuit. That's what we want. We want to have photographers, creative professionals in general, people who want to do YouTube, people who want to make something and put it out in the world. They're not happy unless they're making. They want to stop doing something that they see as mundane. They stop want to live that muggle life. They don't want to live that muggle life no more. And so I want to do the thing that I love for a living. And stage 1 is get somebody to pay me to do it. Stage 2 is make enough money where I can leave the other thing that I do that I don't want to do 8 hours a day anymore. And so all that kind of happens in a tipping point. And in my experience, it happens between years 5 and 7 for most photographers. Some people get there faster. Some people take longer. I'd say the tipping point for style, for brand, and for confidence and for financial stability is between years 5 and 7. Because photography is a small business with a slow growth curve. So if somebody out there is listening to this, watching your channel, listening to your podcast, and they're at year 4 and they're really, really frustrated, there's a really good chance that success is right around the corner. Or unfortunately, I feel like you don't ever get to feel successful.
No.
You just
I feel that.
Right.
I get that.
At what point did you stop and look around and be like, I'm Taylor Mother effing Jackson. I did it.
Still never.
I did it. Exactly.
Still never.
And so this is why this is important. This is important because we are, most of us, solopreneurs. We're individual operators. Maybe you work with a spouse or partner, but one, maybe 2 people in your business, especially at the beginning. And these are our coworkers. These are the people who live the same life that don't want to live that muggle life anymore. They want to do the thing they love. Some of them successfully, some of them still struggling. Not a single one of them feeling like they've got it covered, like they've made it. Everybody, and once you're around enough people that you're like, oh my God, I am not alone. That is the power of something like this, of ImagingUSA, WPPI, all of the good conferences that bring the industry people together. It's unbelievably powerful to not feel alone. Yeah. And that's why I think this is really cool. And this place is just rife with wedding photographers, packed to the gills with wedding photographers. You can't swing a dead cat in here without hitting a wedding photographer. So yeah, I love it. And this is where I got some of my earliest support. People who 15 years ago I met here. that are still dear friends to this day. And you can't walk. You come to something like this with 10,000 people, and it's very easy to feel alone and isolated. But in no time, you are absolutely unable to walk across the expo floor without getting hugged 10 or 12 times.
Yeah.
And that's kind of amazing, I think.
Yeah, I think it was for me thinking back. I think my first WPPI was 2007, 2008. And
Where was it at then? Was that MGM?
Paris.
Oh, that was back
Paris
in the
Ballet's.
day. Yeah.
And yeah, I went with one friend and we didn't know anyone. And by the end of the conference, we probably knew like, not a lot, but maybe like 10 other people.
It's like summer
And
camp,
then
man. You make
next year
friends.
you go back and now those 10 people you're excited to see. And also you get introed into another 100 people.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden you now have other people that are going through the same struggling stage of the business that you're in.
Yes.
And you have somebody to talk to. And also there's somebody that doesn't live where you're at. So you can actually give each other what's working for marketing too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Really cool.
And community over competition is one of those things, but it is a good chance to get people outside of your market. We have a lot of people here from our local PPA affiliate in Orlando, and we have a group that meets monthly. And there are probably about 30 of us here from that group. And we usually meet up for a group photo, and and we're all really helpful towards each other. But it is really cool to see what other people in other markets are doing and to be able to share those ideas. Accountability helps your business be successful more quickly. And you don't really get to experience that until you are in with other people trying to do the same thing. Yeah. So yeah, this is an unbelievably cool event that I've missed one in 14 years. And I come every year. I go to a lot of the conferences because I speak. But one of the cool things is some of the scrubs, some of the dirtbag degens I started with myself and others are speaking on the platform now. And that's mind-blowing because I remember my first Imaging USA, I went into, it was Jerry Jonas, and he was given a wedding program. And I've told him this story too. And what's funny is now it's like I've become friends with him and many other incredible educators who've been doing it even longer than I have. And I walked in and I could never do that. I could never be that. And every presentation was a magic show. You remember that feeling? Yeah. That feeling, it felt so far away and so distant and so unachievable. And then time goes and you're one of the people. So I think it gives you the opportunity, these community organizations, they need talent. They need people to be involved or they cease to exist. Yeah. Right. And so a lot of those people you're coming up with, including yourself, are going to be those people empowering the next generation of people who are also struggling, self-loathing creatives.
Yeah. So maybe to speak quickly to that, something interesting that I think happened. I started teaching probably way before I should have, looking back. Same. But there's no right time.
If you ever feel like you're there, you shouldn't teach.
Exactly. So I went through some stuff. I figured some shit out. And I was like, okay, I'm going to tell people what I learned. And by actually taking stock of that and writing it down, I feel like I really doubled down the learning.
How do you ride a bike?
I don't know.
Can you tell me? Can you explain to me how to ride a bike?
No.
Could you write it down? If you had to, gun to your head. Sorry, video. In Canada, you don't have guns in Canada. Moose to your head. If I had a cocked moose loaded, pointed at your head. Tim, do not cut that out. That was my finest achievement. That joke right there. Could you explain it? No. Because a lot of things that we do creatively, we do intuitively, and we haven't actually thought about the process. So like you said, when you teach anything, when you write an article about something, when you write it down, you have to sit and analyze it because you have to explain it to someone else. And teaching, which is the natural progression of paying forward what other people have given you, it helps you be better at your job too. I think everybody should give it a shot. I mean, some people it terrifies them, but sharing information, creating content to help other people along, that's really cool, and it makes you better at your job, and it gives back to the industry that you've been growing in, you know?
And it's an interesting progression, I think, too, to go from that solo creator doing everything yourself.
How many employees do you have now? 12, 15, 20?
75.
75. Golly, that changes your tax bracket, doesn't it? In Canada, that's brutal.
It's management now. I'm a manager.
Oh, yeah, that's good. It's a good way to be. Yeah. No, Does everybody hate you and talk about you behind your back? Do they stop talking when you walk into a room?
Factions. Yeah. It's a big deal. But no, I have an editor that I work with, and then I use a lot of AI editing too now. That's really changed my workflow. But yeah, it's basically myself and trying to do everything and figure it out still.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there's a lot.
I've been talking for like 3 solid days, so my voice is breaking. And we're supposed to have secret karaoke tonight, so I have no
Well,
voice.
you're gonna have a raspy.
Yeah. Yeah. I should probably do Bob Seger. You know that. I'll do some Bob Seger numbers. That'll be good. Don't try to do Cher, but try to do Bob Seger. So I have to put "Believe" by Cher in the drawer tonight. Yeah. About the AI stuff, I think it's really, really cool. One of my concerns is that part of the style that wedding photographers especially have, which involves editing many, many images over a long period of time. So part of that evolves from the process of like doing it wrong. And I have a little, I mean, this sounds like the old gray mare or whatever. Like I get it. But part of the process is doing it badly until you get it right. Not like this thing, I did one and then it does it all for me. So I have a concern about the lack of tribal knowledge being passed forth from person to person because of the way that we learn. And as someone who educates online, you don't even think of the things. There are little things that you do day to day that would change someone's life that you would never think to make a video about. You know what I mean? Yeah. You'd never be like, that's worthy of being content. But someone would be like, oh my God, that one thing that Taylor said that like seemed so stupid, but it like putting my keys on a zipper thing on my belt saves me 13 seconds a day. I don't know. But it's at these types of events where that I almost always learn more at the bar or at a restaurant or hanging out in rooms after hours with friends when we're talking shop than I do in classes, because people tell you things as you're chatting that they would never think to put into a class. And I think that's a really important part of like going to things. I'm not against online education. I think it's amazing. And if you need to know how to change a headlight on a 1995 Honda Civic, YouTube has got you covered times 1,000. And I mean, I look up everything on YouTube. YouTube is like the greatest search engine in the world. And there's so much I've learned from friends like you and John Gress and Vanessa Joy and other great educators, Seth Miranda, people who really put it out there and put out real useful information. But there's just those little things. Like there's a software that somebody uses that like who shoots volume school and sports, and it allows people to check in and text them when their turn is up. But it's actually made for a beauty salon, so no photographer would ever go looking for it. Like those kind of life hacks are those kinds of tribal knowledge traded live in person in places like this. And it's pretty fantastic. So there is a lot of technology to love and take advantage of with the AI stuff. I don't think any of that technology, any of those things, online education should be taken as that's enough. I think this is important. And it's not for everyone, but I don't think I'd be anywhere near where I am in my career if not for this place and these people.
It's amazing. So you're doing weddings.
Yeah, man.
Are you doing anything else at that time, or are you primarily...
Well, this is how the business took its turn, which was kind of think 3, right? You talk about the business. It was a good segue. You're good at this.
I've done it like 3 times.
Shit, so. Man. This is good stuff. This is a real mic. This is legit. Yeah. Well, it depends on where you live, because I really hate it when where I'm going to backpedal and get up to it. I really hate it when photographers tell other photographers what they should be charging and doing with their businesses, because they may not understand your market, right? So one of the things that in small towns, and I grew up in a small town, that you have to do is it's harder to specialize in a small town. If you live in a place with 6,000 people, you just cannot survive being just the headshot photographer or just the wedding photographer. You have to do a little bit of everything to make ends meet if you're going to do it professionally. The larger area you go in, the more specialists start to come out. So I grew up in a small town, and the only business I knew was full service. We do everything. And that's kind of how we started. I would do anything, take pictures of anything for money. And I found in our area, which is we're in Winter Park, just outside Orlando. So we're in a big metro area with a couple of million people. And the more we specialized, the more we started to look at our numbers, to look at our business and see what services and what areas of practice were the best return on investment, the more we started to specialize. And so I love weddings. I really love shooting weddings. I love the challenge. I love the people, mostly after the first few years. I really love the people.
Yeah.
Those first few weddings, whoo, what a bunch of jerks. Truth is, I was just the wrong person for them and they for me, right?
Yeah.
But what we started to do was look at our numbers, look at our business, and see where the money was really coming from. And return on investment becomes more important when start to have children. And I've got 4. And if I don't make a living doing this, if I don't make real money doing photography, I need to get rid of my studio, get rid of my gear, and go get a job where I can pay for them to go to college and where I can retire. And so that the level of seriousness, the older you get, and if your family grows, that's a level of seriousness that you have to really account for. Because photographers were like, I love to shoot. It's so amazing. I'm living that Oprah-style best life. I'm living my dream. And then you're like, oh, by the way, I'm not making any money, and I'm very sad now because I'm 55, and I feel like I'm starting from scratch. And that is survivable. I'm not making fun. But I am making fun of that Oprah-style best life thing. Like, we get so run screaming at, I want to be happy doing what I do for a living, that we forget that in order to retire, in order to be happy, you need money sometimes, like, because money buys things. Money isn't the object. It's a means to an end for me, for most people. We want to live a life. But the more comfort you have financially, the more you're able to do things, the more space you have around your head to think and to make plans and to vision your life instead of just flail. And so as we started to really look at our business, we started to make intentional changes to it based on what was bringing in money. But really the tipping point was when I found out I was going to be a dad. And my wife, we were standing in the bathroom. Do we have time for this whole story?
We got time.
This is a great story.
We got time.
So we were trying to have a kid for like 2 years. And I had taken up cycling because that's the only exercise I enjoy. I like riding my bike. And we were trying to have a kid. So I'd get up in the morning and I would ride. But when I ride, I can't go to the gym because I need to have a thing I'm doing. I have to go and go play soccer. I don't go run on a treadmill. Go ride a bike. I don't go run. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Although in Canada, you probably have to exercise inside a lot, I imagine.
Got some weather.
Yeah. A little bit. I'm going to make anybody from Canada. I love Canada. I think it's really, really great that you guys have milk in bags. It's the coolest thing. Like, what a way to save plastic. So I get up in the morning and I have to give myself a destination. My cycling often revolved around running an errand. So my wife got up and she said, I need you to run an errand for me while you're out riding. And I said, sure, what? And she goes, I need you to get a pregnancy test. And I'm like, I don't have like a Tour de France outfit. You know, it's like gym shorts, some sneakers. And it was right around, I forget what time, but I hadn't worked in a couple of weeks. We'd taken some time off. My beard was like really fully grown in. My hair was a mess. I didn't take a shower and put lipstick on to go ride my bike. I just went and rode my bike. I looked like a hobo. I looked like someone who walks out of an alley and you lock the doors on your car when you see me. Like, that's what I looked, dangerous and insane. And so I went to ride my bike down to the local pharmacy, and I walked in, and I remember that thinking as I walked in, it's like, I'm going to go buy a pregnancy test looking like this. So I walk up to the counter, and the cashier looks at me like, who would have sex with that? And what is this pregnancy test for? And I'm like, I really do clean up all right. I swear, you know? And so anyway, I rode back, took the pregnancy test, and obviously, spoiler alert, for the first time, she was pregnant. And when she came out of the bathroom holding that thing, the first thought was obviously like, oh shit, what are we going to do? The second thought that snapped into my brain that I did not see coming was, I got to get out of the wedding business. And that was a powerful moment for me. I had grown up, remember, in the wedding business. My parents were wedding photographers. Wedding photographers work 7 days a week. You get an inquiry at 9 o'clock at night on a Tuesday, you're going to answer that inquiry. You're not going to wait till business hours. You get a phone call on a Saturday. If you don't have a wedding, you're answering that call. You're meeting clients and consulting at night. The weddings are by their very nature on weekends in most cases. So like, it's a night and weekend gig. And I realized as much as I love and admire my parents and was so inspired by them making a life for us with their creativity and having a solid business to do that, I realized that I was going to make a different choice because I didn't want to be gone. They're going to be in school during the week, and I'm going to be gone nights and weekends, wedding meetings, engagement sessions, and family portraits, and weddings, and Saturdays and Sundays. And I was like, that's it. And it took us about almost 2 years to get completely out of the wedding business because you obviously have weddings that are booked far out. And I don't have anything against it. And in fact, I sometimes really do miss it, the exhilaration, the excitement, the challenge. And when you have a kid, watching the daddy-daughter dance is quite a bit of a different experience when you got a new baby daughter that you go home and you hold. Like, you're not making fun of butterfly kisses anymore. You're not making fun of that song. You're crying like a moron, like snot dripping out of your nose and trying to not get snot on the back of your camera. Like it's power. There's a lot of cool, powerful stuff that happens at a wedding. And I really do believe in that. I think that when people make that choice and it's two great people and two great families coming together, there's something really powerful about those wedding stories. And I just said it was a business decision and it was a family decision. And so around about that time, we were looking at the books and we were spending about 75% of our marketing time and money on bringing in portraits and weddings. And it was about 40% of the business, I think. I probably told this story before on a podcast, so they'll be like, that's not what you said to Jed Toffer or whatever. But it's roughly, the point is the same. And we were spending about 25% of our marketing and energy and money on bringing in headshot clients. And not even professional headshots, because it was barely a thing. Mostly actors and entertainment. But as it started to happen, a few things were happening at the same time. LinkedIn. Facebook goes to the public. Everybody starts communicating through social media. Twitter comes out around 2006, 2007. All these things happen, and everybody who has a job needs a picture of their head. And I got a phone call, and it was like, we photographed a lot of actors. We have entertainment in our area. So I SEO'd. I optimized our website for SEO for headshots. Never thinking about professionals, only thinking about actors. And Orlando and Central Florida have been an entertainment market way, way back. And so we had a little sideline in that. But then I got a phone call one day, and it was an old man. You could tell by his voice. You know how I knew? The same way that you would know. Don't judge me. An old man called me on the phone. And he says, do you photograph anybody who's not young and good looking? And I was like, right then, synapses just started firing my brain. I can feel it. Like, and I was like, I have been doing this so wrong this entire time. I'm trying to go after this tiny little entertainment market. And I walk outside, and every window, every door, there's somebody sitting in a cubicle that needs a picture of their face. And I should be the one to do that. The market is almost infinite. I had a guy I taught a full day class day before yesterday. I had a guy in my market who I know well come and take my class where I taught everything I know about how to run one of these businesses to do headshots. And he called me ahead of time. He's like, is it okay if I take your class? I was like, come on down. You, me, and everybody we know could try and photograph every headshot in Orlando, and we die trying. Like, the market's huge. Like, do you know how many weddings there are in the United States every year?
I don't actually.
A lot more than Canada. A lot more. No, we believe in America and marriage, you bunch of godless heathens. No, about 2.5 million.
Okay.
About 2.5 million weddings a year in the United States. Now, if it's good, let's say if you're good at your job, you're photographing, let's say, call it somewhere between 30 and 75 weddings, depending on your pricing model, depending on your business. But you're going to be also competing against, for 2.5 million wedding clients in the United States, 5 million wedding photographers. Right?
Yeah.
So the market is relatively small compared to the amount of people trying to get that work. It's very competitive, especially at the bottom. It's very competitive. Once you get that, as we said, style, price, you find your people, competition isn't a problem anymore. People go to your website, they go to your Instagram, they look at your work, and they're like, that's Taylor Jackson's my guy, and no one else will do. And that's where you get to eventually. But in the beginning, very competitive, and you're there at bridal shows, like begging for people to talk to you. It's so sad. Isn't it sad? I'm sorry, wedding photographers. I really do love it. So basically what was happening was I realized that the market for headshots isn't 2.5 million weddings. It's 150 million human beings. That's a pretty big difference in the size of that market. And at the time, no one in my area was specializing in it. And even still, although after, like, Peter Hurley comes along, I'm out there teaching it. Guys like Dave Kalmbach and Mike Price and people who are out there, John Meadows, teaching headshot photography and how to make money doing it, getting the word out there as much as we possibly can. They're still underserved. Headshots are still underserved and served poorly in many cases. Like, everybody thinks they can do it. They think that it's easy. And, well, even though a well-trained chimpanzee could probably pull off a decent headshot, the market's huge, and there's not enough photographers specializing in it to serve everybody who needs to be served. And so that was it. Having that phone call, all these things, these coming together at once to happen to make headshots an actual specializable genre. and becoming a dad and all that, like that hurricane, that soup, that perfect storm, and having that one moment of clarity where I just went, that's what we're doing now, you know? And that was everything. And from every moment that we've specialized more, we make more money, we have more free time, we have happier clients, and we're able to do that in our market. So if somebody's out there in what's a really small, like BFE town in the middle of nowhere?
Letterkenny.
Letterkenny. So Letterkenny, the real place, Letterkenny.
Listwell is the real
so,
town.
So if you have listy problems, if you're out there in listy and you're trying to specialize as a headshot photographer, maybe you won't be able to do that. But in general, the more you narrow your style, your focus, your marketing message, and all the things that you're doing, the more you find your people, the more money that you make. And I had to start that over in professional headshots because it's a completely different market, a completely different way of communicating. Like, you sell because and as funny and lighthearted as most of your stuff is, you actually have such a sweetness in your style. There's such like a sweetness to you as a person and to what you film and to what you shoot. And there's a little bit of like wistfulness and a little bit of memory in there. There's this beautiful little style that makes up what Taylor Jackson does. And it's instant. You smell like it. I can see it from your work. And those people they love you immediately. And I had a style like that. My style was like big impact images. We called it epic wedding photography. And our thing was, we're going to get those double truck 2-page album spread images, and you're just going to get a buttload of those because that's our thing. So we attracted people who wanted those epic, huge photos, at least as much as you could do that at golf clubs in Orlando. But we had some. And anyway, once we started over, I had to learn how to recommunicate because I knew what my message was as a wedding photographer. I didn't really know how to message when talking to companies and people who are doing business or hiring you and only operating during business hours. And that became critical, is to re-message when we made a change, when we made that pivot. And I think that the thing took me the longest to figure out was my corporate and business clients don't give a crap about how anybody feels about anything. There's no feeling. You're not selling emotion. You're selling efficiency. And quality, with efficiency being slightly more important than quality to almost every single client of mine. It's got to be quick. It's got to be easy. It's got to be the least pain in the ass possible. You got to be accessible. You got to be efficient. You got to deliver quickly, and it's got to be on budget. Like it's a totally different world. And once I learned to speak corporate, we got more successful. And so one of the things I think people do in my genre a lot is they try to convince people they need a headshot in their website. And I'm like, if somebody's on your website looking for a headshot photographer, you don't need to tell them they need a headshot photographer. That's kind of you're wasting the above the fold part of your website. Why would you need to convince them they need you, that your company is going to provide them with what they need in the way they need it in their budget. Why are you the best solution? It's about solutions to problems. And that was the biggest shift. And now we're totally there. I haven't shot a wedding in, 6 years, almost 7. That's not true. I did one secret wedding that I made them promise not to tell anybody about or tag me on social media. Because if anybody saw that I did a wedding, it would be, and it was a very dear friend of mine, and his daughter was getting married, and he begged, and he's done so much for me that I did it, but I didn't post any images, I didn't do any BTS, didn't post anything on social media. I did a secret wedding. It's like one of those cool hipster bands in Brooklyn that just pops up in a club and plays a show at like a Shoney's, you know? That's what I did. I just showed up at Shoney's. What's up, Shoney's? Like that was my thing. But it's been great, and I do miss weddings, and I love wedding photographers, but I have a message for them. It's very important. Wedding photography is the worst ROI in the photography business. You bid the most time and the most money putting a wedding together. Even if you're making $5,000, you're probably still too cheap. I'll make $5,000 before lunch on a Tuesday, and when I walk off the job, the images are edited and delivered to the client. You have to put up with these people for 18 months sometimes. So you really got to charge appropriately in order to be successful and happy and to value yourself. Wedding photography is a priceless gift. And the older I get, the older my kids get, the further away I get from my wedding day, the more important those memories become. And those 25-year-olds whose wedding you're photographing have no freaking idea how important that's going to be to them. Ask yourself this question. If they bought a wedding album from you and you said, okay, this wedding album costs $5,000. And what's going to happen is 10 years from now, I'm going to call you on your anniversary and I'm going to offer to buy it from you for 10. Do you think you'll sell it to me? And they'll say, no, hell no. On your 20th anniversary, I'm going to call you and I'm going to offer to buy it for 20 grand. Are you going to sell it to me? No. I'm going to call your kids the day that you die. And I'm going to offer to buy that wedding album from them for $50,000. Would they sell it to me? Hell no. Not in a loving family anyway. I mean, I'd sell my parents' wedding album probably. Like, no, I'm kidding. But you get the point is, wedding photographers are out there undervaluing themselves. And when you really pour your love and art into it, it is an incredibly important work. It is history. It's all that's going to be left of people one day for their descendants, for generations. We have so many photos of like my grandparents and great-grandparents and their families in the early days of photography, the late 1800s. We have these big black and white prints of like their whole church got out in front of the parish and did like a church photo. And I could see my great-grandma in the front row, you know, like it's amazing. And if somebody hadn't done that and saved it, I wouldn't know what she looked like. That wild?
Yeah.
Like, so charge appropriately. Take care of yourself. Not you. You do all these things. Charge appropriately. Take care of yourself. Value yourself. And make sure that you're getting paid what is worthy of the job. And you can find those people that will pay it. And do what you got to do to make a living in the meantime. Drive Uber. Doesn't matter how you hustle to pay your bills. But while you hustle to pay your bills, build something sustainable instead of survivable. Sorry you didn't get to talk.
No, this is amazing. I enjoy listening to podcasts, so I
hopefully that's worth it for some. I was on the PhotoBiz X podcast a couple weeks ago, and poor Andrew, he's such a lovely man, and he didn't get to say like 5 things. I paused twice.
Well, I think there was a ton in there.
Good. I hope so.
I'm so happy that we were here. We connected. We did this.
Thanks.
Where can people find out a little bit more about you?
If you want to follow my educational stuff, I have a YouTube channel. As of like yesterday, I just crossed 7,000 subscribers. It's slow, but I'm building something I'm really enjoying doing in my spare time. Thanks, Tim. In my spare 7K. Yeah. Whoa. Sounds like you're making fun of me. I'm really proud of it. I've built it kind of on the side while running my business and raising my kids with my wife. And so it's not something I can do every day. But when I have an idea and I think something's important, I make a video about it. And it's been really neat to do it that way. I'm also on Instagram and YouTube are Gary Hughes Official. Awesome. Because I'm officially Gary Hughes, I guess. It sounds like you're like putting on your big boy pants when it ends with official. Like other people are out there trying to imitate me. Like they're not. Who would?
Someone else just got the name first.
Yeah. There's a guy. Gary Hughes is actually a fantasy metal artist from England, and he writes about like Camelot and King Arthur and stuff. And he's very popular. He's been around for decades. And I think the album, the seminal work of Gary Hughes's is The Once and Future King is the name of the album. So the whole thing's about King Arthur, and it's shreds. It's actually pretty great. So he has GaryHughes.com. He has Gary Hughes on social media, except for Twitter. I got it first. I was one of the very early adopters of Twitter, and I have 500 whole followers because I just never use it. Yeah. So if you want to find me on Twitter, occasionally I chest out one-liners, and if my sister likes it, I'm pretty pleased that I start using that joke in person. Yeah. But Gary Hughes Official on YouTube and on Instagram. And if you go to my website, it's Hughes, my last name, Fioretti, my wife's last name.com. Or if you get anywhere near it, typing that into Google, you will find me. There's a link for an education page where it's got my gear list. It's got my latest YouTube videos that are up and all kinds of other stuff in there. I don't have like a subscription service or anything. People ask me questions. I just direct them to that page because that's where all that stuff dies. So there it goes.
All right. Well, thanks so much, dude.
Thanks.
Enjoy.
Tyler, was it?
Steve.
Steve.
Actually, yes.
Steve
Jackson.
Thanks for having me, Steve.